cute. Does he like you as much as you like him?
Grandma, would you please just drop it? Hey, Mom! Look at me! Smile!
My name is Salmon, like the fish.
Okay, shipmate, take it away.
First name, Susie.
Bye, Dad.
Bye, Susie.
You are beautiful, Susie Salmon.
I was 14 years old when I was murdered
You're the salmon girl, right?
on December 6th, 1973.
Hey everybody, this is the Post Movie Podcast. I'm Steve Head.
And I'm John Black.
And we have a special guest with us today, Tom Meek. He's a film critic with the Boston Phoenix and president of the Boston Society of Film Critics, and also with New England Cable News.
How you doing?
And this week we're going to discuss Peter Jackson's The Lovely Bones and Hughes Brothers' The Book of Eli. And we'll deliver the bad news first, I think. The Lovely Bones. What do you think, John?
First I want to be fair. I did not read the book, so I have nothing to compare it to. Although I've talked to people who have read the book and they're really angry about what Jackson's does. I had no idea what was going on. I thought it was horrible. Just horrible. I was bored. Lots of pretty images, but they meant nothing to me. I didn't like the characters. 2 hours of my life I'll never get back.
Mm. You know, he said that he was trying to make a movie that he could take his daughter to, and considering the content of this film, I just don't see the logic in that.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, how old is the daughter?
Yeah.
That's really a big benchmark.
I'm assuming like 10 or 11.
You wouldn't take a 10. I don't think this is too far adult movie.
Can't he take her to see Lord of the Rings? Why does he have to take her to see a movie about a little girl getting killed? And I don't think that's a spoiler for anyone, because the movie it is about a girl who is brutally murdered and then gets a job doing a voiceover for her movie. And half of the movie is the police and the parents trying to find out try to find if she's alive, and then find out who did it. And then there's also another movie about what life is like on the other side for this girl.
Well, that's right. She's stuck in limbo, so she's able to sit on Earth and see the man that killed her and see her parents going through the misery of being tortured with not knowing who killed their daughter, or at least suspecting who did it, and not being able to do anything about it because the evidence is not there to convict them.
Mm. And boy, when this movie goes into it is a yawner. I'm telling you. I mean, it's beautiful, but those scenes in the in between were just. I don't get it.
I think Peter Jackson, on those scenes when you're in sort of the other world, which are beautiful meadows with sort of giant roses blooming and going from summer to winter on a dime, and Saoirse Ronan is running through the fields and sort of thinking about her family at home and sort of wondering if she's going to get to the other side or if she can get back to Earth. I think the imagery and the music, he went to 11 and it really needed to be a 7. There is sort of a spirituality to it, and you can sort of feel that in the subtext, but it gets lost in sort of the grandiloquence, for lack of a better word. I personally like the movie better than you guys did, and it did keep me watching, and then there's 2 reasons why it kept me watching. First of all, I thought Saoirse Ronan's performance as the girl who was killed and then narrating the rest of the film, I thought she was riveting. She was in atonement as young Bryony, and she carried that film as well. When she was on screen, she commanded it. I mean, she has these beautiful blue eyes, and she does look like a vulnerable teenager, and she's on the verge of becoming something more when she's killed. I also thought Stanley Tucci as the suspected killer was also phenomenal. He was creepy. I always think that he should play a potential killer in every movie because he is an incredibly creepy presence, and he gives a great performance in this role. Where the film falls apart is, I think, Rachel Weisz and Mark Wahlberg as the parents just really don't resonate. No, well, I mean, we started talking about this earlier. I think Mark Wahlberg has this sort of element of his acting is the same sort of angry nonchalance that sometimes you used to see in Kevin Costner when he was off in films. And he doesn't work, I think, in a lot of these dramatic roles. I think he's good when he's playing somebody who's from the street, when he's playing somebody a little more hardcore. But in this kind of a role where he's playing the dutiful father, when it really calls on the rage, I don't know, it just doesn't carry through.
It doesn't look believable. It doesn't.
I kept staring at his hair. I was like, that's the worst haircut. And, if he's giving a good performance, I shouldn't care that he's wearing, actually it's the worst haircut, but I can remember having that same haircut when I was, a teenager. But my problem was I didn't like Stanley Tucci at all. I thought he was so cliched. I couldn't believe that no one else in the movie knew that was the guilty guy.
Didn't you think that he was so quirky that the other characters in the film would be like, don't you think that they get that vibe and just stay the hell away from him?
Yeah.
But they don't.
Well, I don't want to be a spoiler here, but I think part of the film, and I'm not exactly sure how it works out in the book, is that we, as the viewer, like Susie Salmon, who Saoirse Ronan plays, are in on who the killer is. And we're sitting there and we're supposed to be angry about the whole thing because the people, such as the parents and the police, sort of have suspicions, but they can't tie it up to go after the killer. So therefore, you're sort of caught in that in-between as the viewer. I think that's infuriating. You're supposed to be feeling that infuriatingness because that's what that's what Saoirse Ronan's character feels at that time.
But see, I didn't feel that way about, I didn't feel that way. I didn't feel anxious or, angry that she wasn't getting it, but I got no sense of any kind of passion for her that she wanted that guy punished. I thought she was pretty flat as far as, any kind of anger or drive from her character that, this guy had to pay or had to be stopped.
Well, I don't think she was looking for justice. I think she was looking for her parents to have comfort and to let go and to move on with their lives and to be whole again. And also for her to come to the realization that she was neither on earth nor in, quote, heaven, and that she had to let go and that she needed to move on. I think that was the whole thing about moving on beyond those points. I think that's what they were looking for.
Grandma's here! Grandma! Grandma's here!
What's my mother doing here?
Look, you're not coping, okay? Len's worried, I'm worried. Your mother offered to help.
You're fighting her here? Darling. Oh, hello, Mother. Watch the hair, sweetheart. Oh, look at you. Are you eating?
Is this all of it?
Don't be ridiculous. That's just my makeup. Oh, you are so handsome as hell, Jack.
Lindsay, honey, are you going to say hello?
The child hates me. So, what'll it be, Jack?
Actually, I'm not drinking these days.
Well, that's your problem in a nutshell.
What did you think of Susan Sarandon?
I mean, she was a nice distraction, but again, the film, as I said earlier, you're supposed to feel the degree of infuriation that the narrator, the murdered girl, is feeling.
Yeah.
I think that, again, just like that spiritual quality when she's in the in-between world, that Jackson just doesn't quite get there, and the other actors sort of distract her. I thought Susan Sarandon's character actually lent a lot of poignantness to Susie Salmon's character when she was still on Earth.
She plays off the parents. She presents this sort of other side, like a balance.
Right.
Because they're so stated, but yet she's kind of the wild grandmother.
Well, and she was also encouraging her to go after the boy that she thought was really handsome in school, and she had, she's trying to, she has a crush on this guy, and she's encouraging him, and that's sort of the really sweet spot of the movie, and sort of the irony and sort of the sort of dark side of the film is that she's going on her first date with this guy that she had worked so hard to score a date with, and she's taken from the earth.
Yeah, you see, I had the same problem I had with Tucci. I thought Sarandon was just all cliche, chewing the scenery, didn't feel anything, but like she's just out of the whole thing. I kept thinking that someone needed to either edit the film or something, because it was just so, everything was so, like you said, turned to 11 for me. Sarandon's performance was 11, Tucci was 11. Definitely the computer generated scenes were 11 or more, and I wasn't getting, I think, I know there was a spiritual message hidden there.
I think this film maybe in somebody else's hands might have come out a little differently, because what it needed was, I think what we're all saying here is it required a little bit more subtlety. And I even thought that the main character who gives the voiceover from beyond just kind of told you too much, Right. I mean, let the audience sort of gravitate towards those realizations on themselves.
So no one here has read the book, right?
No.
I gave the book to somebody who read it and loved it, but they had not seen the movie at the time.
What's the email address for this?
Oh, if anybody has any questions, they can email us at postmovieshow@gmail.com.
I want someone to mail in that's read the book, because after seeing the movie, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to read the book, but the ending, and not to give too much away, but what happens to the bad guy, Stanley Tucci? I want to know if that's in the book. It seemed a little preposterous to me.
Mm-hmm. Contrived.
Yeah, and if it's in the book, fine. I need to know that, because otherwise I think it's, again, someone needed to tell Peter Jackson no. Or maybe he had some different plan in the studios, came in and said, well, no, we need this.
Well, I think somebody really should, Peter Jackson really should have been told no, because I think this movie in many ways was an accumulation of bad decisions. A great looking movie that, oh man, I just don't understand the decision-making process on a couple of these dramatic points, especially in the point where the girl finds this diary that the guy kept, and you'd think that she'd be just gung-ho to deliver it.
By the girl, you mean her Susie
and
sister.
And the audience was like, basically just almost shouting at the screen to tell her to offer up the diary so they can just nail this guy.
I mean, it would be different if this was
because he's getting away.
It would be different if it was like a slasher film and the imperiled heroine falls down the stairs 5 times. That's sort of part of what you're looking for. Is you're looking for some schlock and to perpetuate the plot. Whereas here, that is I think one of the weakest part of the films, where there is a critical piece. The movie could almost end right there at that time, but yet it continues to go on. Yeah,
with that diary. Absolutely. And I think that scene in Stanley Tucci, whatever the guy's name is, house was terrific. Peter Jackson knows how to do suspense like that. That was a great scene in this movie of...
Well, there's 2 great scenes in there.
A saccharin overdose. You've got this scene that was just terrific,
The one where she's
breaks into the house through the basement.
And the girl you're talking about is the dead girl's sister. Yeah. Finds incriminating evidence, and and he's in the house, and it's just a wonderfully taught scene. The other great scene actually in that film was also in Stanley Tucci's house, when Michael Imperioli, as the cop, comes by, and there's a piece of evidence sitting right out on the table. And there's this wonderful sort of long dance about him sort of covering up his guilt, and you can sort of almost see his guilt when Imperioli, as the police officer, doesn't.
Mr. Harvey.
Yes?
Detective Len Fennerman.
How you do?
You have some time for a few questions?
Certainly. Come on.
Thanks.
I know why you're here, of course. I think when something like this happens, you always blame yourself. All I can think about now is, why didn't I see something, or why didn't I hear something? Because surely that young girl must have screamed. Did you want?
No, thanks. I'm fine. But if you could just think back, I mean, she was wearing a blue jacket, yellow corduroys, similar clothes to these.
This blue jacket here?
The darker blue jacket. And on the second photograph, you could see the pants as well.
Oh, I see. Yeah. No. It does not ring a bell.
But you were at home that day.
What day?
Last Wednesday?
Last Wednesday.
Was it also in that scene he was showing him? He was showing the detective character his dollhouse.
That's the scene I'm talking about.
Is this a Hitchcock reference where he's looking through the window of his dollhouse, and it's like Stanley Tucci is the master of his domain. That's why he builds these houses.
Yes, well,
that's where the evidence is.
Well, that's the scene I was talking about.
I want to know what kind of neighborhood. Not only is he's such a creepy guy, you keep an eye on him anyway, but the killer builds in the cornfield, like in the neighborhood cornfield. He builds this giant underground,
Nobody saw him go out there and dig this room out.
Heroes is more believable than this. He builds this big thing with a trapdoor and lights and candles and lures the girl in there.
No footprints from the.
But then, when we find out part of the incriminating evidence is his book of diagrams, he's been, I'll build the house here, and he's got blueprints for his torture chamber, but no one catches on to this stuff. And I think part of it, I think part of it is that we know who did it, and like you said, we're supposed to feel that empathy. But knowing he's so guilty and so obviously guilty, at least as far as I could see, just pissed me off.
Well, you know, I think that you're saying that the killer and his traps or whatever are unbelievable. And I mean, think about it. We have seen killers with more ornate traps, serial killers with more ornate traps in films. I mean, look at Silence of the Lambs. I mean, you know, that guy seems to be right out there in public, yet he keeps getting away. And if you look in reality, I mean, there are people who have done some crazy things, like look at Jeffrey Dahmer. I mean, so I think it's how it's served up looks a little implausible, but I think in you know, a lot of times.
Yeah, well, I agree. The way it was served up to me in this movie just didn't work for me at all.
Part of what I think Peter Jackson said interested him about this movie is that everything is so evident. The guy is almost right across the street, and it's just sort of out in the open. And that's what charges this guy to do these horrible things, is that he's getting away with it while, you know, there's these obvious things going on, and nobody's done anything to him about it. Well, and he's done it, how many times, you know, we find out slowly that he is a serial killer, and he's done this, you know, maybe a dozen or so times over the past.
Well, that's sort of one of the things, is that the film sort of wants it to be a sort of whodunit for a while. And the reality is you find out who does it in about the first 30 minutes, if not sooner. And then it refuses to sort of get into the psychology of a serial killer. I mean, if you remember even like the Dirty Harry movie with the Scorpio, I mean, those guys sort of want people to acknowledge what they've done. I mean, that's what serial killers do. And this guy doesn't quite seem to marry to the true sort of psychological profile of a serial killer. I mean, it seems like he needs. I'm not exactly sure why he does what he does. I don't think you ever really get that.
They don't really establish that.
Yeah.
You know, his motivation behind that.
Exactly. Well, that's the point I was trying to make. Thanks for being succinct.
Did you see any connection between the images Jackson used in his In Between Land and what was happening in reality? Besides, I know like the dad and daughter make ships and bottles, and then there's an image of giant, which just made me laugh. The giant ships crashing. So they were tied in for you, but did you find them tied in?
The gazebo was sort of a portal or something.
Yeah, it seemed, on one hand, it seemed like that the director may have, Jackson had some sort of schema, but I think to anybody watching it and sort of letting the experience wash over them, it sometimes seems more like arbitrary. And maybe he was looking for a balance of both sort of beautifulness of, you know, being in this place that's beautiful, but you have a misery below you and allegedly utopia above you, so you're sort of in this pulled place. And I think that's
I think I needed more connection, as pretty as they might have been to look at, and some of them was obvious, like when the ships and bottles become giant ships and bottles crashing on the shore. I needed some connection.
Laughing at that.
Yeah, so was I.
Well, that was a case where he went to 19.
Right.
And just for anybody listening, is that the bond between father and daughter is that they put model ships in bottles. So when she's in the other world, she comes to an ocean that has gigantic ships and bottles on the ocean.
Did Mom know before she married you? About your obsession?
Susie, hobbies are healthy. They teach you things.
Like what?
Like if you start something, you finish it. You don't stop until you get it right. If you don't get it right, you start over again, and you keep on going as long as you have to. That's the way it is. That's what you do. It's perfectly normal. You know, Grampy taught me to do this, and now I'm teaching you. We're creating something here for us, something special.
I know.
And my first mate, Susie Q. One day all of this will be yours.
Jack! Susie! Dinner!
Hey, wait. Ready?
Yeah.
Now hold her steady.
Okay.
Okay, shipmate, take it away. Now that is a thing of beauty.
It's still funny to think about.
It is. It's a weird looking scene.
Yeah, and it doesn't.
Astoundingly weird. I think the weirdness of it was almost unsettling. You know, I was like,
and
it was almost a shark jumping jumping the shark moment.
Well, also there's Rachel Weisz is the mom, and at first she's as distraught as the dad is, and she's working with the police to solve the crime, and then suddenly she's like, "Well, I'm leaving," and goes off to pick fruit someplace.
Well, I think that was a poor development. I think what they were looking to get is that she was just so overcome with grief. There was no closure at all, so she just couldn't handle life and sort of had to extricate herself from it. I think that's what the point is. How it happens in the movie is almost like an afterthought.
Yeah.
And we're left bewildered.
Yeah, and then she comes back like, oh, the crops are in, honey, I'm home. And someone was telling me, I was talking to a fellow critic who just finished the book before he went into the screening, and he was really angry when he came out. And I guess one of the big things in the book is that the mom has an affair with the police lieutenant, and that's why she leaves, but that's not in the movie. I hope it's in the book, or someone lied to me, but it just seemed odd to me that, there's this family grieving, and your interpretation of why makes sense, but I didn't see it in the movie.
I agree. Well, that's my reasoning as well.
Right, okay.
And it's kind of funny that you say that there was that affair in the book, because there's another weird thing that goes on. Michael Imperioli, who's the police detective on the case, has a very, very personable relationship with the family. I mean, this is small town, but it's almost like they have a friendship, although you never would guess that beforehand, because he shows up and he's a cop, but there's this rapport. And they do have moments with the father in Imperioli and the mother in Imperioli that go beyond just the nature of a police investigating a crime.
Right, and they always feel out of place when they happen on screen. It's like, hi, just checking up to see how everything's going.
That's kind of what it's like. I would have seen this movie on Jackson's name alone. Just the premise and his name, I would have paid $10 for it. But having, seen the press screening and experienced this, I'm just so disappointed.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder if this is going to be like a blight on his career, or if it'll be appreciated years from now.
No, he's already signed up to do The Hobbit. So I always, being the cynical guy I am, I figured like, well,
you can just splice that together from the 3 other movies.
Yeah, at first he didn't want to do The Hobbit, and then I'm sure someone threw a bone like, well, we'll let you do Lovely Bones, and you can do whatever you want with it, but you got to do Hobbit.
Isn't that how David Lynch got to do Blue Velvet? Because he did Dune?
Probably.
I think there was some negotiation with Dino De Laurentiis or something, if I have the studio right, on that whole thing.
Yeah, I'm sure there's deals like that cut all the time, and that's why I think if it was a deal like that, I don't know for sure, but it stinks of that, because then no one was around to tell him, no, you can't do this, or no.
I don't think he had people around him telling him no.
No, it sounds like a lot of people were just around kissing his ass saying, I love those giant chips and bottles. They're amazing.
Well, you guys are saying it was boring for 2 hours. I personally got into a bit of the emotion, maybe because I was willing to work for it a little bit more than you guys were. But I would classify this as an admirable failure. I mean, there are some moments that really is. We talked about the 2 police scenes, and there is, as far as the police investigation goes, some great scenes, mostly with Michael Imperioli, and actually even Mark Wahlberg, the one time he goes over to the house, because you can feel his frustration as a guy who believes this guy murdered his daughter, and the police can't do anything without the evidence, and he goes over there to break into the house and have a confrontation with the guy. And I think that's also a very palpable moment. So I would call this thing an admirable failure.
Is that moment of confrontation when he catches Stanley Tucci making the giant wigwam at the side of his house?
Yeah, which just was...
He's like, oh, now that I've made the underground bunker in the cornfield, I'll make the murderous wigwam.
Well, that goes back to the point you were making earlier. So, right, let's just keep the wigwam out of the thing as a reason.
Look, I made plans in my little killer book that tell you how to do this.
I thought Rose McIver, her sister, was good. And there was those scenes where she was kind of onto what was going on, but couldn't say anything.
I just remember her running. She just runs in the whole movie.
It was just she had to run. She, obviously there was going to be a moment where she was going to have to run away from the guy.
That's also in the movie, sort of the plot, and again, I'm not sure how it goes in the book, because the older sister, is she older or younger?
I think she's younger.
She's younger, but she seemed older for some reason to me.
I don't think they established the years progression very well. It wasn't so clear.
But she then becomes the next, she tries to sort of, you can't tell her she consciously or actively does this, but she sort of positions herself as the next bait target.
Yeah.
You know, and it's kind of weird too because Tucci's character, God, I feel like we're giving away all the spoilers here, is targeting another couple too. Remember, there's that scene where Mark Wahlberg comes into the cornfield and he thinks he's going to find Stanley Tucci, and Stanley Tucci's in the cornfield going after a couple. Do you remember that brief scene? It was by the gazebo.
I might have fallen asleep.
I didn't fall asleep during this one. Strangely enough.
Add that to the list.
Remember there's the high school boy who beats up Mark Wahlberg?
Yeah.
Yes.
And Stanley Tucci's in the cornfield because he was targeting that same couple, I believe.
Yeah.
Don't have sex in the cornfield. I've got this bunker underneath with candles and, blood.
Would you pay?
No.
No,
I would not pay.
Knowing what you know about the movie, would you have paid $10 to see it?
Knowing what I know about the movie,
I mean,
I would pay $10. No, but had I not known what I know, I would pay $10.
I wouldn't.
I would go in knowing, if it was, like you said, Peter Jackson's name, and like his other movies for the most part, yeah, I'd go see it, but...
I was listening to Ty and Wesley's podcast before doing this, and I think they agreed that this is the worst movie of last year.
Oh, come on. There were so many other bad movies last year.
No, not the worst movie of last year.
Yeah.
This is an admirable failure with a lot of gems in it, granted. And its problem is that it's grandiloquent and that the plot doesn't tie to the emotional direction that the character's going to. I think one of the things is that Jackson really didn't decide whether this was going to be a thriller or a spiritual sort of journey of a family. And I really think that's where the downfall comes in, because I think it oscillates between the two, and the plot suffers, and then all this sort of other bigger spiritual stuff suffers. So neither piece gets it right, and you can kind of see that. And so part of the frustration of being that person caught in between the two worlds, I think becomes the frustration on the viewer, because you're sort of like, well, where am I supposed to be here? Because you're caught between these two worlds of filmmaking, and neither one is right.
Maybe this was the most frustrating film. I was really frustrated watching this film, so shall we move on to Eli?
Sounds good to me.
It's not a book, it's a weapon!
The Book of Eli. I think this is the best thing that Denzel Washington has done. Well, I digged American Gangster, but anyway, his new film, The Book of Eli, is a post-apocalyptic futurist scenario that takes place 30 years after what they call the Flash, where everybody has devolved into, all their quirkiness. So, this is something I think with every post-apocalyptic movie, everybody just turns into something, quirky, and there's a whole lot of that going on here. Anyway.
Well, I think in every post-apocalyptic movie, the whole thing is civilization's crumbled, and pretty much you have these bands of marauding people who pretty much don't have any civility, and they're all about the sort of like group tribal thing. And then you have these sort of people, your hero will, mind you, who is maintaining that link back to the way it was before him.
Do you remember what it was like? I mean, in the world before.
Yeah.
Well, what was it like?
People had more than they needed. We had no idea what was precious, what wasn't. We threw away things people kill each other for now.
Really?
Yeah.
You have a book. Can I see it?
No, you cannot.
I just
No.
want to look at it.
I said no.
Listen, I can't even read. Come on, please let me to see it. What is with you? It is just a book.
It's not just a book.
What do you mean it's not just a book?
Look, no more questions about the book, all right? No more questions.
They all seem to shop at the same store that Mad Max went to, that every post-apocalyptic movie went to. They all have the same kind of outfits, like this chic post-apocalyptic thing.
At least it wasn't Mad Max football post-apocalyptic stuff.
I like that.
I did like that. I thought
that was very cool.
I thought the road. Well, we're talking Road Warrior, not Mad Max, because Mad Max actually takes place on the eve of the quote unquote apocalypse or the downfall of civilization, whereas the Road Warrior is just in that sort of edge once we cross.
I think we pushed Tom's button
this
here.
This is sort of the reverse of the Road Warrior. There's no real automotive theme here. He's walking, and he has been walking for something like 30 years, going from East Coast to West Coast or something like that, and he's been entrusted or has found or somehow has come into the possession of the last known copy of the book.
The good book.
And he is going to do whatever he can do with his physical abilities to protect this from other people who would use the word
in the book
to their own nefarious ends.
Is that thing loaded? I don't think it's loaded.
One way to find out.
Look, I need that book. I mean, I want the book. And you, but if you make me choose, I'll kill you. I'll take the book.
Why? Why do you want it?
I grew up with it. I know its power. And if you read it, then so do you. That's why they burned them all after the war. Now imagine how different, how righteous this little world could be if we had the right words for our faith. Well, people would truly understand why they're here and what they're doing, and they wouldn't need any of the ugly motivations. It's not right to keep that book hidden away. It's meant to be shared with others. It's meant to be spread. Is that what you want?
With all my heart and soul. I always believed that I'd find a place where this book belonged, where it was needed. I haven't found it yet.
Well, the whole thing about the fall of civilization, since it's 30 years after The Flash, there's very few books, so we're stealing a little bit from Ray Bradbury here, and there's allegedly only one copy of the Bible, and it's never explained to you why copies of the Bible were intentionally burned, and very, very few people can read. Only people who are older can read, and it seems to me, from the way the story goes, that very few people over the age of 35 or 40 are still alive, because it's so hard to live in this. It's like the road. I mean, there's not a lot of resources out there. There's very little water.
It seems like there's the younger generation survived, and there are very few people over 30-something. So you've got Gary Oldman.
Well, there are two old people, and we find out
who the world before.
Yeah, and we find out how they've managed to hang on so long in kind of a grisly way.
I mean, Denzel Washington scavenges for scavenging cats for food. That's the first scene you see. Is a beautifully shot scene where it looks just like, I mean, when you first see the first scene of the film, it looks just like the road. You know, there's a barren forest, there's debris falling through the sky, and there's a human corpse laying there, and there's a cat that has barely any fur on it starting to feast on a corpse, and out of nowhere comes somebody to knock off the cat, because the cat is a food source.
And food and oil. He when he cooks it, he saves the oil for, because they don't have chapstick.
They don't exactly explain what it was that just eliminated all livestock, all.
Well, I think the whole point was there was a nuclear fall. When they say the Flash, they also talk about it after the war, which kind of leads to the whole thing about burning Bibles afterwards, because they said it was something that people did after the war, was burning Bibles. I'm not exactly sure what that plot point is. I think what ended up happening was the Hughes brothers said, hey, we got Denzel Washington, let's make a post-apocalyptic movie about a guy who's a prophet and a great sort of ninja with a machete, and have him carrying the one thing that's going to save humanity, and have every marauding band coming after him. And it happened to be the Bible. I don't know exactly. Right. The Bible seems like the thing that got dropped in at the end, and sort of they retrofitted the plot. And if you can get beyond that, it's a fun journey. I mean,
it is fun. They really do establish him as being pretty badass with with the swords and stuff like that. There's a couple of scenes in this movie where he has the confrontations. The one on this where he sees the girl getting raped and stops, or no, the one where he's lured into a sort of a trap.
Right. And a woman is sort of offering herself up for him so that a bunch of guys can waylay him.
Yeah. Well, I think most people are cannibals in this futuristic.
Well, they make him whenever they meet a stranger, and they make them hold out their hands, and if they're not shaking, they're okay. Because we learned, and this is something I didn't learn in high school science, is that if you eat too much human flesh, you get the shakes, and that's how they can tell if someone's a cannibal, because they always make them hold out their hand.
And good scene.
So that's a friendly tip to all our listeners out there. If you see someone with a shaky hand, run.
But that's something you almost need to know before seeing the movie, which I did know, but during the movie, I don't think that's really ever explained. So if you see the hand holding out thing and you don't know this, you'll be lost.
That's what's going on with the storekeeper, where Eli goes to this town to recharge his
Tom Waits.
His
iPod, yeah.
Right.
The post-apocalyptic iPod that has Motown on it.
And he asked him to keep his. I think, he checks his hands to make sure he's not shaking.
Yeah, but it was one of the funnier things about this movie. There are some interesting guest appearances. Yes. Tom Waits as a store owner is one, but I kind of almost expect Tom Waits to show up in quirky little things like this. Where he's more of a. It's the voice and the personality, and if you know who he is, you kind of smile because it's Tom Waits. But this had Michael Gambon.
Yes, that was a great.
Don't say anything else about that, though.
Right.
Because that's.
There's Michael Gambon and Malcolm McDowell. I won't tell you what they're doing, so not to spoil the moment. But when they turn up in the movie, for me, it was like one of those great "what the fuck" moments. Why, I wanted to know if they, owed money to the IRS or something. Why actors of this quality sign on to do such small parts in such a shitty movie?
But this scene that Michael Gambon, I'm not going to give it away, but Eli and Mila Kunis, they're hungry. They approach this house in the middle of the desert, and they meet Michael Gambon and his wife, and it's the best damn scene in the movie.
Travelers, that's all. Don't mean any harm.
No trespassing. Have you read the sign?
We're very sorry, I didn't see it.
What's your business?
No business. Just, we're very sorry, and if you let us, we'll be on our way.
George, look at them. One of them's just a girl.
Yeah, that's an old story. I heard it 100 times before.
We get so few visitors these days. George is suspicious of everybody. I'm Martha. Would you care for some tea?
It's almost
the way that whole thing evolves.
The house almost looks like is it Whistler? Who's the guy who painted the American Gothic?
Like the American Gothic.
This couple just is the American Gothic. Their house is just like that, and boy, do they have a weapons cache in there. But and there's a lot of other fun surprises in it. That was by far the best scene in the film. It almost made the film go to camp, and the film might have actually had done a little bit better had it gone to camp, because I think the thrill of it, once you sort of learn out what the item is, and you kind of suspect that the item is going to have a bigger significance than it does when it's all. I mean, I think the ending is a little. Well, okay, ridiculous would be it.
I was just the ending of that particular scene.
No, I'm talking about the ending of the movie. In other words, the thing that drives the film through you think would have greater significance, but when you get to the end of it, the end of the film is a little sort of disappointing, or it doesn't marry to the arc. I mean, you're given a lot of build up. I mean, you're following Denzel Washington, who's a prophet who is guided by a bigger force, and he's walked across the entirety of America to a point that he's not even certain of. He's just driven to it by an internal compass, by fate, by destiny, by even, you know, you would say, a religious.
By Gary Oldman, by running from Gary Oldman. Well,
there's that too, but in the end, when it all comes down to it, it just sort of makes the whole thing hollow. And you could see that there's hollow rails underneath it the whole way through, and you're sort of hoping that when the cards are laid down, that your low expectations are not going to be met. But the journey is interesting. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. See, one of my problems, and it's that along the way he meets Mila Kunis, a girl named Solaris, and here we are. We're in the post-apocalyptic world where, you know, everyone has to pay for water, and, you know, everything's, you know, dry and dusty. She struts around like a runway model. She's got the most gorgeous hair in the world.
Miscast.
You know?
I couldn't help but think that there's a motorhome 20 feet away.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you know, the wind is just blowing her hair a little bit to make her look good, and everyone else is getting, you know, Dust Bowl Oklahoma thrown in their face.
But the other thing that's sort of side to that is I thought that she and her mother was played by Jennifer Beals. She does a good job in a very small role. Are sort of the privileged guests of Gary Oldman, who runs this town. I mean, basically, Denzel Washington walks into
explain that.
Denzel Washington walks into what is essentially an old Western town because you're in a lawless frontier, and it's run by Gary Oldman's character, who's called Carnegie. I don't know if that's a stab at early American industrialism or whatnot.
They are. There is a lot of anti-consumer stuff here.
But he pretty much runs the town, and he's created commerce there, and he owns the water supply, and he sells water supply for bartering, and he runs the little whorehouse that's there. And so if you want to get a little action or a little water or even tequila, you got to go through Gary Oldman. And meanwhile, he has sent out bands to look for the book, even before Denzel Washington comes across the plane.
Right, and no other books they find are good enough, and there's, you know...
Ironically, he's looking for a Bible, and one of the books that one of his minions brings to him, his obsequious minions bring to him, happens to be the Da Vinci Code. Mind you, it's the only book in the stack, too, that's in pristine form.
Right, because no one read it.
Because no one read it. It's that and an issue of Oprah's magazine.
I just, I didn't like the way the film looked.
They did drain all the color out of it.
Yeah.
It's green and blue and...
I didn't see any green. I just saw brown and dark brown.
Okay.
You know, just dusty. And I get it.
Well, it's the same thing they did in The Road, was they blanched it out to sort of, I think, first of all, to give you as the viewer sort of a feeling of what?
Nausea?
Well, that's probably...
The future is so depressing that you can see why people are killing themselves.
Exactly.
You know?
There's that. But yeah, I think the filming thing, the one thing I want to say about the filming thing is that first scene where he takes out the cat,
right?
Which is shot so well, and there's a lot of great action, and the arrow flies through the air in slow motion and actually hits a bit of ash falling, and the ash disintegrates, and it's really, really well shot. So when you first see the first time when 4 or 5 guys are descending on Denzel Washington, and he whips out his machete, I thought everything was going to be done Matrix style, shot, you know, in those slow motion, multi-angle things. And all the action sequences, based on the standard we have set by the Matrix and beyond, and the martial arts films that have been using special effects, are pretty disappointing by that scale, I would say.
Yeah.
They just happen in real time, and even when there was before all these special effects, I mean, people like Sam Peckinpah really had an eye for shooting action scenes, you know, with different speeds, slow motion, reverse angles.
That was a really neat action scene where he, faced half a dozen guys and took them all out. It's like it was filmed in silhouette, and the blood was animated. It wasn't like
the silhouette was the only interesting part of it, but the actual choreography and everything that went on with it, to me, there's times when allegedly Denzel didn't get hit, but even in silhouette, it looked like he might have taken a shot from a chainsaw once or twice. It's really hard to tell. I mean, the silhouette's the only thing. And the weird thing is, in order to create that silhouette scene, that's kind of bothered me because I couldn't quite wrap my mind around it. He steps back into a culvert area, where it's sort of...
See, and I take that as a sign is that the Hughes brothers can't really do action well. So we'll do it in shadow, and that'll cover up half our mistakes because Denzel isn't a martial arts master. The cutting lets you know that. He's not doing a lot of moves. He's doing a lot of poses where, the arterial spray. A lot of his quote unquote fight scenes are just pose scenes. He poses and the bad guy falls down.
Yeah, the kids will love it.
Well, yes, the kids will love it.
My point is that if you want to see action films where some guy's got a sword or a knife and is taking on 5 or 6 people, this film ain't it. I mean, and I would not even recommend this film on the very least because it's not a good film, but Ninja Assassin did it better.
Well, and I also think that it's odd the way they're marketing it because they're not really pushing the action scenes, and then I think the action scenes are so sudden that they're kind of exciting because, it's like, oh, something happened finally. It's not just this guy walking around while Mila washes her hair.
That's the belief.
No, it's not Mila. It's Jennifer Beals.
She's kind of problematic in the film because she's just unbelievable. I just don't believe for a second that she's survived in this post-apocalyptic world the way these other characters have. She's too much of a model.
Yeah,
it's not her fault. That's just the way she is.
And everyone else is, a serial murderer, rapist, water hogger. And she just struts around like no one's touched her.
Well, she's untouchable because she's under the largesse of Gary Oldman's lore, Carnegie. Yeah, I mean, so if you touch her, I think you're dead meat. And
he'll make you read the Da Vinci Code.
He's actually he does his bad guy thing here. That's what he does, and he does it really well. He's an effective bad guy. It's the Gary Oldman bad guy, but he's good.
He's great. He's great. But then once you start to see what he's looking for in the big pivotal quest thing, it just becomes so hollow, and you're sort of wrapping your mind around it. Really, why does he want the Bible? And you think that the actual Bible that they're looking for has some sort of like the Ark of the Covenant in Raiders of the Lost Ark, that it's got to be some mystical thing beyond.
He's got 3 or 4 towns he wants to.
Well, he's an enterprising kind of a guy, but why does he need a Bible? I mean, it seems like
because he wants to capture people's hearts and minds and use the power of the word to.
You mean the opium of the masses?
Put a crew together. We're going after him.
It's not a book. It's a weapon. A weapon aimed right at the hearts and minds of the weak and the desperate. It will give us control of them. If we want to rule more than one small town, we have to have it. People will come from all over. They do exactly what I tell them if the words are from the book.
It's happened before. And it'll happen again. All we need is that book.
He's got a copy of Oprah's magazine. That would work much more effectively than the Bible. I mean, come on. How many people read the Bible? How many people read Oprah? Even 30 years after the Flash.
I mean, in most post-apocalyptic films, don't people sort of create their own sort of dogma anyways, like Logan's Run? Even in the Road Warrior, Lord Humongous has sort of come up with his own tenets and stuff, and people fall underneath his control.
Can you name the tenets? I bet you can't you?
I don't know exactly what his rules of civilization are.
One of Gary Oldman's performance in this, I just found to be terrible. And one of the reasons I think is because when Gary Oldman is playing the bad part and he's not really trying, it's like there's a volume knob on his microphone because he says something, then he shouts! And he says something, then he shouts! And that's the whole performance to me. Is like, the sound guy is off stage. Oh, whoa! Like he's revving up a little car. It's just
don't you think that's what the stereotypical bad guy does? Is that he goes from
yes, the stereotypical bad.
He's like,
actor
didn't I
that.
tell you to go out and get the book? No, what did I say to get the book?
Yeah.
Kind of a deal. That's just,
again, it's that thing where I'm not sure if they're trying to cross into camp, or it's just that it's campy and they don't know it, or they just. Well, it's Gary Oldman. He does that thing.
We were talking about Lovely Bones. We were talking about Lovely Bones. Sort of. Well, I was saying that Lovely Bones was kind of, sort of two movies, and I think this film too is also two movies that they can't, and the filmmakers really can't decide whether it's a serious action thriller drama like The Road, or whether it's something a little bit more campy. I mean, and looking for something that you could probably put it similar to, I guess, Death Race 2000. Because I'm not pulling something else out of the back of my head. And when I think about this movie, and I didn't think about this with The Road, because The Road, I read the book and I love the book, and the movie didn't marry up to the book. When I think about post-apocalyptic movies, I really don't think that you can beat The Road Warrior. I mean, you were talking.
It is the.
How did we get back on this again?
I'll come back to it because I saw The Road Warrior on cable about 2 or 3 months ago, and it is beautifully shot. I mean, George Miller did it, and the choreography is brilliant. Every action sequence in that thing, and there's no great stunts or everything. It's just
no large amount of dialogue. Everybody,
that's right. Everything is edited together perfectly. Everything in that movie has purpose. Every little action triggers to the culminating plot point at the end. I mean, it's just really well thought out, and it's really well shot, and I just think if you want to see a dusty, dry bed with tribal people going after the last civilized people, because that's really what we're talking about here. The Road Warrior is it. It is the standard. It is the best post-apocalyptic movie ever made, hands down. And I'll say maybe one other movie, which would be On the Beach, which was the movie with Gregory Peck, which was more of a realistic drama about how the world would unravel after a after a nuclear war.
This has nothing to do with this movie, but I gotta know.
This is Kurt.
Beyond Thunderdome? Was that a mistake?
It was kind of the Ewoks.
It was kind of the. And it's just, I still can't get over Tina Turner.
I mean, if you didn't, I could see her getting involved. Well, Mel Gibson was just huge at that time. Yeah. I mean, he was going to come to America and conquer America. He was good looking. He had the accent, and The Road Warrior just. It's one of those movies like Blade Runner, which is ironic. They came out at the same time. It was one of those movies that did okay in the theater, but just became so much bigger after it. After its commercial release.
And the bad guys in The Road Warrior just awesome. Every scene.
Well, and I think those bad guys, actually, even in the Mad Max film too, they're a little complex. They're just not two-dimensional. I mean, Lord Humongous is a guy who has a little bit of compassion for this, and he's also shrewd, and he has goals and wants and desires. He's just not conventionally a bad guy who just kills people, which you have a lot of times in films. Now, I think the Gary Oldman character in Eli was a person that was supposed to have some complexity to it. And I think, him and Denzel Washington's Eli kind of syncing up, I could use a man of your capabilities. Yeah.
What do you want with me?
Straight to the point. I like that. I like that.
You're not just educated. I never saw anyone handle themselves the way you did. I don't know where you learned it, but I sure as hell could use it. This little town, just the beginning. I'm about to expand. I need expert help. I could use someone like you.
Thank you, but I'm really not interested.
Well, the people who work for me live better than any Walker ever dreamed. That's Redridge here. That's the boys, anyone. Real beds, hot food, women. Clean water. You could do a lot worse, my friend.
Thank you.
Tell you what, stay the night. Well, try a little local hospitality. See how you like it. We'll talk again in the morning.
Word of advice, Walker. It's not a choice. It's always a choice.
He sees the value of people.
He sees the value of, a guy who's that good with a machete.
When you see... Oh, go ahead.
But I was just going to say is then, again, it's all driven by the need to have a plot point that doesn't really feel organic on screen, which is, they become bitter enemies over the book, which, goes back to how weak the book is a conveyance for the film.
It's post-apocalyptic. It's also very Western. They have a high noon sort of showdown sequence where you think, Gary Oldman says what he's, or Carnegie says what he says about Eli's value, but still the bullets are flying. A bullet could come from anywhere. He's standing out in the middle there, exposed, could die at any minute, any second. But true, yeah, but
Not going to happen.
The targeting isn't so.
So I think to kind of wrap this up, I think what we all agree on is that you should really get the Road Warrior.
Yes.
And avoid the Book of Eli. Or if you were disappointed in Book of Eli, rent the Road Warrior and see how this can be done and done well.
And if you really want to see a great performance by Denzel Washington, go rent Glory. I just saw that the other night on cable. I just forgot. I knew it was a brilliant film. I just forgot how brilliant that film is.
I'd go see the Book of Eli again. I dig it that much.
Really?
Would you pick for it? Yeah. No. I mean, that scene with Michael Gambon and his wife, the way that was filmed.
Yeah, but it didn't fit the rest of the movie. It certainly didn't.
Well, you can
fit
make a point for that, but there's a part. There's some comic book violence and fun going on here.
I mean, we're talking about Peter Jackson. Not knowing what I know now, not knowing what I knew now beforehand, I would pay $10 to go see Lovely Bones before I'd go pay to see the Book of Eli based on the trailers. Now, having seen the two movies, if I was going to pay $10 to go see a movie, I'd probably go see Book of Eli.
That wraps up this episode. In this episode, we discussed the Book of Eli and the Lovely Bones. I'm Steve Head.
I'm John Black from Boston Event Guide.
Tom Meek, Boston Phoenix.
And you can check our website at postmovie.wordpress.com for show notes and send us an email. Let us know what you think about the show. We're at postmovieshow@gmail.com.